Welcome back, aspirants, to True Health and Wellness. I'm Eli, and thank you so much for joining me again on part 3 of this extremely important lecture series on the core principles in health and wellness that you absolutely must understand if you're going to take your well-being to the next level. First of all, congratulations for sticking with me throughout all these lectures, and I guarantee you by the end of this, you will have the tools that you need to see through all the lies and misunderstandings about health and wellness, and you're going to have a very, very, very solid basis upon which to build further and further understandings. Also, go ahead and feel free to download an audio version of this lecture if you want to listen to this on the fly while you're driving. As much as I am going to be presenting some charts and images for you to see, at least you'll be able to hear what I'm saying and get the benefit of it. I'd rather you hear the audio version than hear nothing at all. Of course, if you haven't seen the other 2 lectures, then I highly recommend you see those first. My first lecture on simplicity, and then my second lecture on cause and effect. These are crucial to the understanding, and once they're paired with this 3rd lecture, then it'll only be in the solid foundation that builds, where you have everything you need to approach health. So go back and watch those. That's mandatory before you continue on with this one. All right, listen to me very carefully. The 3 concepts that you've learned in these lectures, including the one I'm going to be talking about today, the structure that these 3 concepts will form will serve as a universal filter through which to screen all falsehoods and myths regarding diet and wellness. When you read this and read that about dietary protocols, dietary regimes, certain fad diets, all these things, you are going to be able to effortlessly, and I can't stress this enough, effortlessly identify nonsense from truth. And I promise you that is the case. With these concepts firmly apprehended, it will make your life so simple, and it has been for me, and I hope that when you do learn these, it will be as simple for you as it is for myself and other great scholars who've appreciated and understood these foundational principles of man, of natural law, and principles that govern the human system. Okay, so the 3rd concept that I'm introducing to you in this lecture is an aggregate term that I haven't really seen used before, but nonetheless defines exactly what is important for me to convey the proper idea to you. The subject we're going to be tackling today is anthropotaxonomy. It comes from 2 different words, anthropo meaning human, and taxonomy meaning classification, identification. Put them together and what you've got is anthropotaxonomy, which is the classification, identification of man. Okay? And for our purposes, we're talking about identification in terms of diet and eating behavior. Humans are funny. As humans, we generally have a tendency to carry on in behaviors in which we pay no actual introspective thoughts toward. We simply do behaviors that have been shown to us. And even though we have knowledge from our observation of the natural world in our lifetimes that would contradict some of the behaviors that we engage in and condone, we never actually put those 2 together. We never actually think about many of the behaviors that we simply do or take for granted. We never dwell on them. We never scrutinize them. We simply perform them because that's what we've been told to do, because that's what our culture has shown us is appropriate to do. And not once do we ever think or consider, are these behaviors actually, in fact, right to do? We just do things because, well, that's just what humans do. That's propriety. And this is a very, very grievous error in human thinking and judgment. And of course, I'm particularly focusing on diet and eating habits, but of course, this applies to every single other realm of human philosophy and human thought as well. So it's so funny. Humans are very, very, very interesting creatures. We have the ability to rationalize and to self-identify, have all these forms and functions of higher thought and higher awareness. Now, when we observe nature, what we observe is that we see animals in their natural habitat, in their natural setting, and we see them eating a certain diet that nature has prescribed to them, okay? In large part, we don't see animals really deviating from that plan. So let's just say a giraffe. I'm going to use giraffes a lot in this lecture, so just get ready. I hope you like giraffes. Nature has designed a giraffe to eat a very particular diet. Giraffes eat only vegetables, only leafy green vegetables and what is available to it by virtue of its biological endowments. A giraffe never strays from that diet. A giraffe will eat of the materials of that food group for its entire life, and it will be perfectly healthy until the day that it is taken down by a predator or the day that eventually age catches up with it and breaks its tissue down. We notice this all over the animal world. We notice that wild horses eat what wild horses eat. We notice that frogs eat what frogs eat. We notice that mice eat what mice eat, and so on and so on and so forth. And so what becomes obvious when a human being observes nature, as we've done for hundreds and hundreds of years, is that all animals eat what is spontaneously produced for them by nature. Let me repeat that one more time. All animals eat what is spontaneously produced for them by nature. So these animals come intact with a natural instinct that gears them towards a certain path in eating, and they almost never stray from that. Also, in the animal world, an interesting fact, wild animals are virtually free, completely free of all the absurd diseases that afflict mankind. There's no heart disease, there's no diabetes, there's no atherosclerosis, there's no MS. We never actually scrutinize and observe and think about this. Why do animals not get the diseases that man are subjected to? Okay, so, I can't really remember the last time I saw a mountain lion eating spinach. I don't remember the last time I saw a mouse taking down a gazelle. I could be wrong about this. I don't think I've ever seen a hippopotamus crack open nuts and seeds with hands that it doesn't have in which to crack open a nut or seed. Frogs largely don't go after birds to eat. Birds fly in the air. There's no way a frog could get a bird with its biology. It's just impossible. So, I've never seen that. I could be wrong. Oh, God. I've never seen a blue whale eating bananas. I've never seen a camel take down a hyena. I feel so silly. I feel ridiculous saying these things or having to point them out. But you'd be surprised at how obvious the things that I'm saying stand out to you, but when compared with your actual behaviors, we do things that are just as ridiculous. And we'll see how this unfolds as the lecture proceeds. Alright, so you get the idea. Nature constructs a form for the organism, and it designates that form for a particular diet, and the animal simply does that because its instincts are intact, and it knows what it eats, and it just does that. It doesn't stray. That's what it does. Okay, so that's a good starting place for which we can build the rest of the lecture. Now, one of the things that people will say in response to that is that humans are different from animals, and that humans are not animals. We are something completely different. I agree with this. Okay, humans are not merely animals. There is a very, very distinct difference in conscious evolution between what the human thought is capable of and what animal thought is capable of. There are certain elements of human biology that point to this, but the biggest obvious difference is, again, our ability to rationalize, our ability to conceptualize. These are things that largely are lacking in the animal world. All of our conscious faculties are so far in advance, and if you have trouble seeing that there is this difference between the human and the animal, then your powers of observation are dull. Now, there's a distinction to be made here. Although human beings are much more consciously evolved than our animal brothers, it does not mean that we are outside of the boundaries of natural laws and universal principles that govern the animal world. We are subject to those laws too. So as different as a human being is from an animal, we all must obey the law. This is absolute. There is no variance from this. All organisms, whether alive or not, must obey natural law. There's no arguing around this. If you live in this physical reality, you are subjected to natural principles and natural laws. including morality, including philosophy, including health, including diet. So just like a mouse is a completely different animal than an elephant, and just like a blue whale is a completely different animal than a mudskipper, they all adhere and are inextricably bound to natural laws and natural principles, and a human being is no exception. Absolutely no exception, okay? So this distinction must be made. We observe in nature that creation seems to have accounted for all the types of animals a particular selective diet, and that the structural form of each individual animal tailors it quite suitably to a particular diet that nature has selected for it, right? I mean, to this diet, the animal very rarely, if ever, strays. We also notice that all animals, without exception, eat only what is spontaneously produced by nature. So knowing what we know about observing animals on the field, and knowing that we know that human beings are subjected to the same natural principles that animals are, it leaves us with the very obvious question: what has nature designed the human being as? What is the diet that nature has prescribed to the human being? Because we know that the horse has a diet, the cow has a diet, the wolf has a diet, the lion has a diet, the sheep has a diet, the fish has a diet, the bird has a diet. They all have their particular diets. So that is the question then. And this question answers so many misconceptions about health. What has nature designed the human being as? Right? It's a very good question. So yeah, if you grow up in North American society or European society or any developed country in the world, and your culture teaches you that, yeah, you just eat whatever the hell you want. Eat everything. Grains that you couldn't possibly eat if you didn't process them. Eat this on the floor. Eat that in the sky. Eat that 50,000 feet below the surface of the water. What? It's a free-for-all. Who cares? Just eat whatever the hell you want. That's not how nature works. You gotta know this. Now, this is important because it's very difficult for us to understand. Because human beings, with our God-given abilities to rationalize and conceptualize, it's our greatest gift, but it's also our greatest downfalling. For this gift allows us to think of reasons and ways and devices and machinations to come up with all sorts of unsuitable dietary practices and convince ourselves that we fall outside of the parameters of natural law. We don't. And that is important. Stress how important that is. We do not fall outside those parameters, but our ability to think and rationalize leads us to believe that we can. And then when that happens, we can observe exactly what the animal is doing out in the field, and we fail to ascribe those same principles to ourselves. It's a huge disconnect. Okay, you can see, like, when these understandings start to seep in, it really, really starts to click and make sense. Okay? Let me answer the question that I've put out to you, and then in the rest of the lecture, we'll go through very, very briefly how we know this. Okay? Humans are fruit eaters. Humans are fruit and nut eaters. You could say that humans eat nuts as well. Fruits and nuts. This is the diet of the human being. This is what nature has designed the human body for. This is your diet. This is what you eat. To deviate and stray from that is the reason that you have all of the diseases associated with man. If human beings are to stick with the diet that nature has prescribed to you, you will see the complete absence of all of those. Okay, so that is a bold assertion, I'm sure. There are going to be hundreds of people in the health community that vehemently disagree with this assertion that human beings are fruit eaters. But let me start with just some quotes from learned scholars in the early 20th century and throughout the middle of the 19th century. From the 1850s to about 1920s, there's something very interesting that happened. There was a stranglehold placed on the intellectual movement, on the intellectual community, and through schooling. Early 20th century, you know, prior to the 1840s, 1850s, around there, forced schooling, government schooling was not a thing. But as the underground secret societies, as the Anglophile network, as the proponents for the centralized corporate economy slowly started to blend their resources and assets together to completely take over society as they know it, as they started to get more power, they realized that in order to control an economy, they needed to take over the school system. So forced schooling was implemented as a way to stifle the natural creative process in which a human being is raised and turn the human being into a drone that simply fits into the industrial wheel as just a cog that helps the machinery keep on rolling. Okay, so this is the purpose of forced schooling. Now, concomitant with that implementation of forced schooling, you saw the gradual eradication of intelligence and creativity and all of these things that made the founding fathers and all of these incredible intellectuals and scholars from the old day, things that made them successful in how they were just reared by experience and going out and doing things and research and all these things. All of that had to go because you can't have an enlightened society running around. You can't control an enlightened society. So my point is that all of the great healers, scholars, anthropologists, and all of these scientific disciplines, in order to get a more unadulterated version of the information that those institutions provide, you've got to go before the mid 20th century. You've got to go back a bit, and what you'd find that these people were way ahead of us as in our current state right now in their understandings of natural law, natural science. It's incredible. So why don't I start by reading you a list of quotes from the old scholars who knew exactly what the human being was designed as by nature. In carnivorous, herbivorous, and omnivorous animals, the mammary glands are located upon the abdomen, while in the higher apes and man, they are located on the chest. This is an interesting anatomical fact to which there is no exception. This is Dr. Kellogg in Shall We Slay to Eat, right? Apes and humans, we have tits. Okay, that's where our milk comes from. All the other animals have their teats on their bellies, on their abdomens, right? That's important for you to know. Flesh, when eaten by man, tends to undergo a process of decay in the stomach, causing a scrofulous poisoning of the blood. In this unnatural action, let me repeat that, unnatural action lies the cause of many complaints and disturbances of the system. Bad breath, heartburn, eruptions, and vomiting. That's Dr. Schlickison, Dr. Schlickison. Next quote. I fearlessly assert that cereals and starch foods on the one hand, and intricate cookery and luxurious compounds on the other, mutually play into each other's hands. And whenever and wherever the non-starch diet is adopted, it will be found that the tendency is all the time towards simplicity. Where are we familiar with simplicity? Lecture 1. Simplicity and healthfulness. That's Emmett Densmore. Okay? Principle of simplicity. I talked about this in Lecture 1. If you haven't seen Lecture 1, go back to Lecture 1. This is pure truth you need to understand. Although man has included meat in his diet for thousands of... Okay, you guys, this is... You need to hear this one, okay? Because this you will hear all the time. Okay? Oh, we've been eating meat for thousands of years, so it's got to be right. No. Just because you do something for a certain amount of time has no bearing on whether it's right or not. What is right is truth. What is right is natural law. That's truth. Okay? Although man has included meat in his diet for thousands of years, his anatomy and physiology and the chemistry of his digestive juices are still unmistakably those of a frugivorous animal. Biology is set. That is what you are. It doesn't matter what you think you are. And it doesn't matter how you behave. You can behave like an omnivore, but nature doesn't care, right? You're a frugivore. Yeah, you can behave in variance to that, but you're going to be punished for it. You understand? I can no longer consider purely vegetable food as the normal diet of man, but only as a curative method, which is the greatest service in various morbid states. That's Dr. Alanis, South America, early 20th century journalist. Right? So he's saying that herbs are very useful for medicinal purposes and whatnot, but they're not the staple diet of a human being. And I agree with this. This is true. Most raw fooders don't embrace fruit. Instead, they embarrass it by stripping the avocado down to fats and proteins. They paint a portrait that is most uncomely, unflattering, and entirely dishonest. By reducing a banana to 100 calories in the most ugliest of fashions, they attempt to quantify the unquantifiable. Let me say that one more time. They attempt to quantify the unquantifiable. By converting a fruit salad to a plate of LFHCs, they degrade and insult the innocence and beauty of fruit. My refusing to eat flesh occasioned an inconveniency, and I was frequently chided for my singularity. But with this lightest repast, I made the greater progress. For greater clearness of head and quicker comprehension, flesh eating is unprovoked murder. That is Benjamin Franklin speaking some serious truth in the last little part of that. Flesh eating is unprovoked murder. Yeah, it is. It must be honestly admitted that weight by weight, vegetable substance, when carefully selected, possesses the most striking advantages over animal food in nutritious value. I should like to see the vegetarian and fruit living plan put into general use, and I believe it will be. That's Fellow of the Royal Society, Sir Benjamin Ward Richardson. This one's straight up. Animal diet is not essential to man. Just man. Dr. William S. Playfair, CB. Yeah, I couldn't put it more simply myself. Dr. Alexander Haig, FECP, the leading physician of one of the great London hospitals, writes that it is easily possible to sustain life on the products of the vegetable kingdom needs no demonstration for physiologists, even if the majority of the human race were not constantly engaged in demonstrating it. And my researches show not only that it is possible, but that it is infinitely preferable in every way and produces superior powers both of the mind and body. These people were smarter than us. It occurred to me that since grass is the natural food of cattle, it was easy to see that to the ox or the horse, this presents no difficulty. No difficulty in eating is what he's talking about. And I began to have a suspicion that perhaps wheat and rice, and the cereals generally being only grass seeds, are natural food for cattle and not man. This is 2 + 2 = 4, guys. I mean, this is basic observation, right? But for some reason, we never look at this stuff. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is I want to show a quick chart comparing some of the differences between carnivores, herbivores, omnivores, and anthropoid apes, frugivores, and humans. Humans and apes are the closest in biology. They are the closest linked in biology. If you compare the human anatomy and physiology to every single other type of animal in the animal kingdom that we know of, you will find that the apes and the humans are almost identical. They're virtually indistinguishable from one another in certain characteristics, okay? And this is one of the major reasons why we can consider ourselves fruit eaters, because gorillas, orangutans, these are all fruit eaters, and they have a system of physiology that tailors them to that diet, and humans have literally the exact same physiology. So, I mean, as we go on, this slowly becomes 1 + 1 = 2. Okay, so let's start with talking about different types of placenta. Yummy! Carnivores have a zonary placenta, herbivores a non-deciduate placenta, omnivores a non-deciduate placenta, and only in the anthropoid ape or frugivore and human do you have the discoidal placenta. These are just describing the different configurations that the placenta forms in different animals. Deciduate means that which is thrown off. So in herbivores and omnivores, for example, there's no placenta that is thrown out in birth, but in humans there is, and a carnivore placenta is just completely different than that. Okay, here's a very, very difficult one to observe if you're being honest with yourself. Carnivores are quadrupeds. They go on all fours. Herbivores are also quadrupeds. Omnivores are also quadrupeds. Anthropoid apes, Humans, they are two-footed. They go on 2 feet, right? I mean, think about it. Yeah, there are other frugivores beside anthropoid apes, like fruit bats, for example. Some of the bats are fruit eaters. Now, they are a less complex organism than the ape and human, but being frugivores, there are many similarities between the ape physiology, human, and the bat physiology that indicate that it's a fruit eater, and we'll see that as we go on. Oh, here's one that most dietitians have magically failed to recognize. Carnivores have tails. Huh, how about that? Herbivores also have tails. Omnivores also have tails. They might have smaller tails, but they do have tails. Anthropoid apes, humans, no tail. Okay, here's a very obvious one that most people will be able to identify. Carnivores have claws. Big, just nasty old claws. An herbivore has hooves. Omnivores have claws and paws, just like their carnivore brothers. It's only apes, frugivores, and humans that have flat nails and hands. Okay, so people that claim that humans are omnivores, you know, if you are an omnivore, you might have hooves like a horse, you might have claws and paws like a bear. You don't have these. Hands and the flat nails associated with hands are meant for picking the most evolved form of vegetable that nature produces, a fruit. You have these hands, and of course, with these hands, you pick the fruit and you eat it, right? We don't have claws and paws for tearing into flesh. We don't have any other biological tools for digging out roots and getting roots and biting roots. No, we have these delicate, nimble hands, right? Think about this. Even the fruit bat has hands. It doesn't really have claws like any or paws. It has hands that it uses to access fruit and pick them and eat them. Even if I were to stop the chart right here, if you ever want to prove to yourself what it is that you eat, what nature has engineered you to eat, look at yourself in the mirror and raise up your hand and notice, oh, crap, I have a hand. This makes you a fruit eater, okay? It doesn't get more obvious than this, all right? You're not an omnivore. For people that say you're omnivores, you're not. That is incorrect. That is not true. That is falsehood. That is against nature, okay? You can behave like an omnivore, but you can't change your biology, okay? Let me say that again. As a frugivore, as a human being, you can choose to renounce natural law and behave as an omnivore. But just because you behave as an omnivore doesn't mean that you are an omnivore. It means that you are still a frugivore who's under the deception that he is an omnivore. Teats on the abdomen, okay? We encountered this in the quotes earlier. Carnivores, herbivores, omnivores, they have teats on the abdomen, Frugivores and humans, apes, mammary glands on the breasts, okay? Important distinction to be made. Let's talk about teeth. This is a huge one. We could just spend an entire lecture on teeth alone, and this would be enough. Carnivores have very long and sharp canines. Their canines are set apart from the other teeth, right? So if you notice that carnivores have spaces in between their teeth, these spaces that separate their canines from other rows of teeth, and there could be other spaces that I'm not aware of yet, but anyway, this is something you can notice. In carnivores, there's only one real jaw motion. They don't have that side-to-side motion that frugivores have. It's just up and down for tearing and shearing meat. In an herbivore, teeth are made of an alternate layer of enamel and dentine. They also have what they call a dental plate, right? It's this plate on the teeth that the other row of teeth kind of fit into. And that plate is meant for gnashing and grinding up grain and herb and whatnot. Very particular set of dental arrangements if you're an herbivore. And herbivores also have spaces in between their teeth, but they have 3 jaw motions. So they have the front and back motion, they have side-to-side motion, and they have up and down motion. An omnivore, very similar to a carnivore, markedly different canines than herbivores or frugivores or tusks. They've got big old tusks or large canines. They also have spaces between their teeth, and they also have 1 jaw motion, very minimal side-to-side give. Anthropoid apes, humans, there are no spaces between human teeth and ape teeth, right? Or at least no major spaces as in the other animals. And their canines are underdeveloped as compared to the other animals. We also have 3 jaw motions. Now, in apes, very curiously about apes, when people argue that humans are omnivores because of these dinky little tiny canines, like this makes me an omnivore? Like, are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? What cow can I just bite into with this? That's what I'm gonna kill an animal with? Because so people will argue that humans are omnivores because of the obvious canines that we have. Apes have much bigger canines than we do, and they are frugivores. Let me say it again. Apes, pure frugivores, pure fruit eaters, have larger canines than humans. Yes. Okay. And they're still frugivores. Carnivores have short alimentary canals, 3 times the length of the body. Herbivores have long alimentary canals, 30 times the length of the body. Omnivores have a medium alimentary canal, 10 times the length of the body. This is because herbs require a much more complicated form of digestion than meats. Nature seems to have understood that meat goes rancid. You kill a thing and it starts to rot and decompose, right? This is obviously observed. So nature seems to have understood that, and in designing animals that are meant to eat meat, it makes the digestive tract very, very short. So things don't have time to go rancid and putrefy in their system. It just kind of goes out before it has time to do any of that. If an herbivore with a digestive system 30 times the length of its body were to try to eat meat, they would get so sick. Okay? In humans, anthropoid apes, frugivores, the alimentary canal is 12 times the length of the body. Okay? Again, very close to our ape brothers and very different from the rest of the animal family. Here's an important one. Carnivores have no sweat glands. They pant to relieve themselves from excess heat. Right? They pant. You can see this with the big cats. Right? They pant. They don't have sweat glands. Okay? Herbivores do have sweat glands on their skin, although not as many as frugivores and apes. Omnivores also have few sweat glands. Hogs, for example, only have them on their snout. Now, with apes, you have millions of sweat glands all over the skin. Just all over the skin. Millions of sweat glands. Humans, millions of sweat glands on the skin, and more than apes, more so than apes. So this is a huge one. Okay, this is another big one that separates us from all of these other animals. The colon is smooth. In carnivores, the colon is smooth and non-sacculated. In herbivores, the colon is sacculated. And in the omnivore, the colon is smooth and non-sacculated, right? So sacculated meaning it has these ridges and folds and flaps and whatnot. It increases the surface area. It's meant for more complex forms of digestion and absorption. In carnivores, it's smooth. Right? Because the meat, as it might rancify and putrefy, it doesn't want to settle in these little crevices and cracks that the herbivore and the frugivore have. No, so carnivores have a very, very particular GI tract associated with meat eating. And if herbivores were to try to do that, or frugivores, then you run into problems. AKA all the diseases that we know of. And of course, humans and frugivore apes, the colon is sacculated just like the herbivore. Okay, so in that respect, herbivores and frugivores are similar. Okay, and the last thing I'll mention, a carnivore has acidic saliva, no digestive enzymes in the saliva. Herbivores have alkaline saliva and the presence of digestive enzymes for breaking down starch. Omnivores have acidic saliva, just like their carnivore cousins, no digestive enzymes. Okay, frugivores and humans, alkaline saliva, just like our herbivore cousins, and the presence of enzymes for starch breakdown. Okay, so another area where herbivores and frugivores are similar, but totally different than carnivores and omnivores. Sometimes people get this confused. They think that humans are herbivores or vegetarians, or we're not really vegetarians. We're a bit different. Okay, we are frugivores. We're fruit eaters who have the ability to eat vegetables, yes, but it is not the diet that nature has prescribed to your system, to your body. Okay, now I want to start wrapping this up because I don't have too much time left, but I hope you can start to start to process this in the right way and start to understand that, yeah, nature has designed you to do a particular thing, when it comes to diet and eating, just like it has with all the other animals. Okay, we talked about that before. And to deviate from that will result in disease and conditions that we associate with average living in cultured society. And these things are largely avoidable if you just know what you are and do what you're supposed to do. Dr. Emmett Densmore did wonderful experiments in the early 1900s, or maybe it was late 1800s. And, just rational thinking at its best. He said, well, I can obviously see that all animals eat a particular thing. So if I want to test what a human being is meant to eat, why don't I subject them to one article of diet or a particular class of diet and see how they do? What he did was he hired people to eat only grains, right? Like only beans and potato, and that's it. That's all they got to eat. And they got sick so fast. I'm talking days. They got violently sick. And these are cooked grains. This is not grains as nature has produced it, right? We're talking even though they're cooked and made palatable for the human physiology, right? Which is cheating. And again, if you want to test this for yourself, just to know if something is in your particular diet, try eating just that. And no cheating, no heat treatments, no cooking, no nothing. Just that particular food and see how well you do. So let's just say you're convinced you're a carnivore. Eat only raw meat that you have caught with your own biological equipment. Tear into the flesh with your claws. Bite into it with your fangs. What? No. Digest the raw meat with your frugivore digestive system. Okay. You can't do these things, right? You can't sustain yourself on these. Try eating just herbs, just like a horse or oats. Try eating just coarse oats or herbs like a giraffe or a horse. Go into the field and eat grass only, like a ruminant, like an animal that grazes. You can't do it, right? You can't do it because that's not what you're meant to do. Go into a field and eat wheat straight, and that's it. Just wheat, right? Or just grains, or if you think rice and beans are in your diet, well, try eating them without cooking them. Just eat them raw as nature has produced them. You won't be able to do it. But go out and eat fruits and nuts, and you can survive. And not only survive, but you can thrive. No cooking, no heat treatment, no cheating. Just what your biology allows you to do. Okay? The longer you steep yourself in these understandings, the more obvious it becomes. I can't stress this enough. It's so easy. And now that we've been through most of this lecture, you can start to see that this will filter out all the nonsense. So when you have your health textbook that tells you need a particular amount of beef and a particular amount of milk and a particular, automatically that it's BS. Because if you know what you are, if you know that you're a fruit eater, prescribing me beef, it's based in falsity. It's based in nonsense. It's error. It is erroneous. If I were a horse and I knew that I'm just going to be in the field eating all day, and some other horse came to me and said, yo, let's go out for sushi, I would say, sushi? What? No, I'm a horse, goddammit. I don't eat rice. If I'm an insectivore, like an anteater, and my anteater buddy comes over to me and he says, hey, let's go grab some octopus, I would look at him and say, octopus? Are you out of your mind? Do I look like I belong in the sea? I can't hold my breath for 20 minutes on end. I don't have gills. Where are you going? Going into the sea for your food? My food is right here. What I can access with this long snout. This is what nature has designed me to do. And I'm gonna, go try to eat octopus. Okay? See how you do. I'll be fine over here. Right? This is how obvious it is. It's so obvious when you finally understand. And here's the major problem with this, guys, is that if you actually have understood what I've taught you in these last couple lectures, then the knowledge puts you in a position of responsibility. You now have the understanding of what the human body is and what you should be eating. Now, having the understanding puts you in a place of responsibility for your own self. Okay? So knowing what you know now, if you continue to abdicate yourself from the responsibility of knowing what you are, you will continue to reap the effects of those decisions. You will continue to be punished under natural law through sickness, through illness, through weight gain, through all of the things that we consider adverse, right, or unpleasant. You're going to continue to be subjected to these cause and effect principles so long as you ignore what I've taught you in this lecture. Okay? Now this is your choice, right? You can harmonize, you can use your rational ability to harmonize with natural law. And you hear this all the time. Humans can eat meat because we have this amazing ability to rationalize and conceive of ways that we can trap animals. And we have guns now. We've created guns with our ingenuity, so we can shoot them and take down animals and eat them. Yeah, it's great that we use our amazing cognitive abilities to come up with ways to divorce ourselves from nature, as opposed to using our natural faculties to harmonize with nature and to recognize these dead obvious things about our human bodies that tailor us to the particular diet that we are. You know, here's something that we can entertain. Instead of using our cognitive abilities and our amazing abilities to conceptualize, instead of using those powers to think of ways to divorce ourselves from our very nature, okay, that's one way you can use them. But a better use of those abilities is to use them to actually learn and recognize what your nature is and to harmonize yourself with nature, right? And live in accordance with those laws instead of breaking them and divorcing yourselves from them and living in abdication of those laws. How about we try that? Yeah, why don't we try that instead of things like hunting? It's amazing. The things that humans will say and think of and conjure up in order to rationalize ridiculous behaviors. It is amazing. The things that I've heard in debates from people in order to justify meat eating, you would not believe the stuff that comes out of people's mouths in order to protect their egos and to protect their belief systems and to shelter it from the bombarding force of truth and of nature. It's crazy what people will say. You know, in the realm of degrees of destruction of life, people will actually equate picking an apple from a tree and killing an animal. They'll say, people who advocate carnism will say that these two things are the same. You can't, I don't know what to tell you. Here, try this. Have you ever thought about the obvious, plain as day difference in level of consciousness between a goddamn apple and a horse? A fully aware, conscious horse that screams and writhes out in pain just like any human or any other animal when it's subjected to it, and the apple that gives itself freely to you for the picking. I mean, do you notice anything different about those two things? I mean, people are just amazing. Amazing. If you think shooting a horse in the face is the same thing as picking an apple, you have so much work to do on your conscience, it is not even funny. I'll save this debate for another lecture, but anyway, for now, thank you so much for listening, and you're gonna have to excuse the force with which I've presented this material. Usually I try to speak very, very slowly and controlled because I don't want to be misunderstood and I don't want to be misinterpreted, as is the trend with people attempting to speak truth. But when you're accosted with so much hostility in attempting to speak very, very obvious truths that some people will recognize and other people will not, because the ego just does not allow them to open up to this type of thing. So these things have to be delivered in a certain way sometimes for them to be apprehended in the correct manner. And I'm going to finish off this lecture with one more quote, and I think that this quote really, really just summarizes it in a very, very concise way. And you know what? This one's important, so why don't we let the narrator take care of this one, okay?
It is a basic premise of natural hygiene that humans, like all other creatures in nature, are provided with all the materials and conditions required to maintain health. Species throughout nature intuitively restrict themselves to a limited variety of foods to which they are specifically adapted. We must conclude that humans are also intended to partake only of those foods to which we are physiologically adapted in order to live healthfully. Humans should be studied as a member of the whole biological community and compared anatomically and physiologically with other species to ascertain our true dietary requirements. When considering the character of human anatomy and physiology relative to our natural diet, we must do so within the context of nature, rather than in the artificial environment of modern life. In this way, we consider our natural foods as those that are consonant with our physiological faculties, rather than those that we have acquired a taste for. An article by the DCP Press.
Thank you everyone so much for listening. This concludes the third lecture in this series. You should go over the first, second, and this lecture again and again if you need reinforcement in these teachings. But these three lectures, these three concepts, simplicity, cause and effect, and anthropotaxonomy, these things are going to create for you a foundation, an impenetrable foundation to which only truth can filter, and all misconceptions will be weeded out for people that are subject to those misconceptions, okay? You now have what you need to see through all the lies and to understand what you are, understand what happens to you if you act in opposition to what you are, cause and effect. And simplicity is a concept that harmonizes all of it and makes it just easy to understand, right? Simplicity kind of encapsulates the cause and effect, eat only what you're suited to, right? Simple. All the ways that you're stressing to think of how to prepare food and blah, 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 all these things, none of this is necessary. Just like it's not necessary for any other animal roaming the field. You're a human, you have your diet, you eat it, right? It's very easy. And if you do this, right, if you stick to these teachings, the closer you stick to the teachings, the closer you harmonize your diet to the concepts of simplicity and anthropotaxonomy. Cause and effect governs those decisions, but the closer you stick to those principles, you're going to see that your health and wellness are things that take care of themselves. Weight management, this is something you don't have to think about at all, so long as you eat what you're supposed to be eating. When's the last time you saw a fat cheetah, a fat horse, a fat frog, an emaciated frog, an emaciated whatever? It doesn't matter. These things don't exist in nature because natural animals just eat what they're supposed to eat and they do what they're supposed to do. It's only humans who think we're carnivores, who think we're herbivores, who think we're omnivores, have all of these problems, right? This is all coming from a place of love and responsibility and obligation to truth. This is my motivation. This is really what gets me going. I've become enamored to truth and love, and for this reason, I hope that this lecture series helps and contributes to the uplift of humankind and the uplift of the human conscious evolution, and betters your health and wellness and takes it to another level that you didn't know was possible. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we'll catch up with you on another video. Subscribe to the Freemelon Society. Stick with me. You know, we've got lots more teachings and lots more things that are going to help you in your life and in your journey to higher understandings. Peace and love to everyone. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time on the show.